Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how to do cloth dynamics for this one. In our previous video we showed you how to basically take out any type of weapon trigger or just triggers in general that you want to tie to your controllers on your VR headset. This includes like secondary triggers or weapons. If you want to pull out something like, I don't know, this is very random, but a KFC bucket and then put it on top of your head, things like that. That would be the previous video, which was the weapon trigger one. So in this one we're going to be working with cloth dynamics. This could be very taxing on your system or other people's systems, so you got to keep that in mind. VRChat heavily criticizes you for using cloth dynamics because it's working, it taxes the processor when it tries to calculate where the vertices are in the game. However, for me, I look at it as, well, if you're using a VR headset and you're running VRChat, chances are you already have a powerful rig, so why the fuck do I need to cater to people that are having toaster potato rigs, you know? So I really don't care. I'm not really considerate of other people's hardware. If you don't have the hardware, then you shouldn't be using my avatars, and I'm sorry, that's just kind of how it is. I try to make these quality. I don't try to make these dumbed down. I like these looking lifelike and as real as possible. So yeah, that's my little rant for that. So let's go ahead and get right into this, guys. So to basically make his leg cloths down here at the bottom move and his butt cloth on the back move, it's pretty simple. Where it kind of gets a little more complicating is adding colliders on his legs to keep these cloth parts from going inside of the legs. That kind of becomes very tricky. You have to really finesse it and really get a fine revision of it until you're happy with the results, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get into this. So if we go into our clown seething entertainer here, we have two things. Remember when we rigged this guy up in Blender, like my first part 1 video, we created these meshes as separate pieces. The reason why we did this is because we're telling these meshes specifically to have a component for each of these, because if I basically, it would just not work very well if I had this all joined up, and then I would have to tell what parts of the mesh not to move, and it's just a nightmare to do it that way. Again, VRChat heavily criticizes you for having multiple meshes too, because again, apparently this taxes your system. I try to keep it under a minimum of 3 to be able to at least upload these onto my avatar world, or otherwise they will take down my world and I have to go through the lengthy process of getting it approved again, yada yada yada. So again, we had to create these in parts because we got to do these separately, so it's a lot easier for us. So I usually like to call whatever the mesh kind of is, I call it by that name. So cloth leg, cloth for the back. I don't know, I should have probably called this butt cloth or something, I don't know. So we're going to work with the back cloth here because it's probably going to be the most difficult here. So we're going to hit, so click on your cloth mesh here in the drop down window, add component, type in cloth, and there we go. And then usually the best values that I have ever found with cloth is bending stiffness is 1, so that you're just going to have to change these values. Bending stiffness is 1, world acceleration 0.1, dampening is 0.2. I find that these values are the best that I've ever found by playing around with this. Most of the other stuff you don't have to mess with. And yeah, so if we now go into, we want to click on this little box here at the top, and this is going to be our cloth constraints. And sometimes for the reason with these models it does this, where like the model thinks it's up in that box right there. To fix this, all you have to do is just click on anything else and then go back into cloth again with what you're working with. Click on it again and it'll reset itself to where it needs to be. Don't know why it does that, but it does. So this is where you're going to tell it to what part of the mesh you don't want it to move. So usually if we don't do this, what's going to happen is if you don't add any constraints at all, this part of the mesh is literally just going to fall off the body. You have to add some kind of constraints, otherwise that's going to happen. So what I like to do is for visualization, make sure that manipulate back faces is on and max distance is on. And then make sure from paint it's actually select. Make sure you're on select and just drag and drop which vertices you want to work with. That's probably pretty good right there. So we're going to set these groups right here to have a constraint. So these ones will never move. These vertices will never move at all. You want to hit max distance, and you're pretty much done. You can uncheck that box right here. And if we hit play now, you'll see that he has cloth dynamics now. Oh, that's interesting. I don't have a game camera. Oh, for whatever reason, I unchecked it. There we go. Now we have a game camera. Okay, if we go here, actually, sorry, let me go back from the back again. Click on our clown here, go into move. Doesn't matter if you move this or not, it's just going to reset, so you can move this however you want. But as you can see, if we move him very lightly, you'll see that the cloth moves as it should. But the problem is as you can see, it is clipping into the back of his legs, and that's a problem. This is where the finer details come into refining that. And what we're going to do is we're going to unplay it. Now what we got to do now is start adding colliders. I usually like to add the colliders to the corresponding armature part. So for instance, here's your right leg and your left leg here. So right leg, I will set create empty, and then we're going to hit add component and look for cap collider. So here we go, capsule collider. And then we're basically going to hit this little edit collider here, and you'll see these little itty bitty squares that you can barely see on this ring. And you're just going to want to bring it in on the y-axis here because we are dealing with legs. And just try to fit it into the thigh as best as you can. So as you can see, I'm just kind of squeezing it in there. I like to bring it up to right here because it's going to be the thigh cap collider here. And this guy is a pretty big thicky boy here, so it's okay to be a little large with this because his legs are pretty fat. Clown is a thick boy. Bring it up to right there maybe. Alright, and that looks pretty good as a test run for our first cap collider. So I also like to rename these as leg. So what one are we dealing with? The right leg. So leg R cap. I usually like to label them as such. And then we're going to go into our left leg, create empty, and we're also going to call this one leg L cap for leg left. And usually, I'm going to show you a trick. Gonna add another cap collider. Usually if you take the component values, if we click on the cog right here, hit copy component, we can usually copy these values to the other one and automatically do it for us to keep it even, as you can see there. It didn't quite do it as well right here, so we do have to edit it a little bit, but it works to getting a little bit of a foundation here. So as you can see, now they're almost just about identical. Alright, that looks pretty good as a start. So now what we're going to do now is we're going to hit play here in just a sec. Go back over to our cloth now that we have two cap colliders set up. Now we got to basically tell those cap colliders to collide with that cloth. And how we do that is we hit cloth, and then you'll see cap colliders right here in our cloth component. We want to make sure we set that to 2 because we have two colliders that we created. Go into our scene. Sorry, I probably should explain this. These little two circles right here, click on the circle for element 0 and hit leg left for that one, and do the same thing for the second one, leg R cap. So we have the left one and the R one in element 0 and 1. Okay, now we're going to hit play here. Go into our scene. As you can see, it's kind of floating a little bit off of it, a little too bad. I may have to edit this a little bit, but let's go ahead and just start moving our clown around and see how it's colliding. So it's colliding with his legs a little bit, but it's still not perfect. And sometimes I can mess with these a little bit. Maybe set that one right there, and I can copy this value right here. I should mention, anytime that you're in play mode and you make changes in play mode, they do not apply when you unclick play. So if you want those changes to be applied, you have to basically, for instance, if we hit play again, and again I gotta fix that, but if we hit play again, and say we move this around, and we find a good position that we want it, or you were messing with the cap collider values here, you want to make sure that you hit one of these cogs, which one you're working with. You can't do both, unfortunately. So that's why you got to make edits here and there at your own pace. So you want to hit the cog. You want to hit copy component when you're in play mode, because say I put the cap collider right here, right? Uh-oh, it goes back. So it never actually applied that. So that's what I'm saying. So you want to make sure that you basically, when you're in scene here, if you want it right there, you want to make sure that you go, because we're dealing with transform in this situation, hit cog, copy component, and then when you hit unplay, you just hit cog and then paste component values when you're out of the play position or play button. That way it actually sets it to that position that you had it when you were in play. So if that makes sense. So let's see, how does that react now to that side of the leg? It's a little bit better. Not by much, but it is better. Now I'm going to start messing with the left one here. Probably right there, maybe. Copy component. Paste values. Okay, now let's go ahead and hit play again and see how this reacts. Yeah, it's a lot better. As you can see, it doesn't really collide too bad. Sometimes that's what we're going to have to fix next, is sometimes the cloth will want to flip on top of those colliders, and how we fix that is just adding a hip collider. So we basically would go to the hip bone, add another empty, call it a cap collider, call it hip collider, and we would basically have that in the X position, I believe, to have it vertical, and it'll keep it from going on top of the colliders like that. So now we got to try to get them off the colliders. There we go. Now the only last ones that we would probably have to set is a collider down here in his leg, his bottom legs right here, and that'll keep him from having those little bottom pieces of the cloth go inside the leg. So I like these positions as is right now. They seem fine. So now we're going to go into the knees here. Here we go, right knee, right ankle. Probably just do it off knee probably. Create empty, call it knee R cap. Cap collider. And then we're going to have to reposition it. And as you can see, this gets very tedious, very quick, and you have to do this just about on every avatar that's dealing with cloth dynamics. It can be a very big pain in the ass sometimes, but you have to make do with what you got. I may even be able to use this same cap collider for these cloth pieces right here too, so I may get lucky. Kill two birds with one stone, right? Okay, I kind of like that, so I'm going to copy this component right here, this component value, and then we're going to go into the left knee here, create empty. We're going to call it knee left cap. Add component, cap collider, and paste component values. And then we're just going to have to move it a little bit. It's not quite in the position that we want it. I'd say that's just about pretty good. Ah, damn, I hate it when it does that. If you don't click that box just right enough, it will not like you. Okay, what do those look like? I like them. I think that might work. So now we're going to go back to our cloth here. Now we're going to add two more, making this 4 on the cap colliders. It's going to create duplicates here. Now we have element 2 and 3. We're just going to change 2 and 3 to our kneecaps now. Our kneecap colliders. So now we have the left one and right one set up in here for cap colliders, so this way that the cloth will hit against that part of the cap colliders. Okay, now then, and let me fix that before I go back in. Okay, so now if we hit play here, there we go. Go into scene. This might be pretty damn good, if not accurate. Okay. not perfect, but I could make those bigger. I would actually probably have to create another cap here, maybe another kneecap right here. Maybe I'll use these ones for the bottom ones, and then I'll have a separate one right here that's a little bit just as big as these to keep these from going inside of each other. Just for the purpose of this video, and I don't want to make it too lengthy, all you really have to do is just add cap colliders, just what I'm basically doing, and you just got to keep refining it until you see the results that you like. And when it's actually not clipping as much through the legs, that's when you know you have a good product, a good avatar, and then you would just basically publish it. For right now though, I'm going to try to get these leg ones to collide with the ones that we created right here. I'm just saying for right now, this hip cloth right here, I'm just going to call it finished for right now for the purpose of this video, so it's not too lengthy. I'm just going to say, oh, we're good, like it's not colliding with the legs, we look good, we don't need to add any more cap colliders. So, but I will add them on my own terms. I'm just doing it for the length right now. Alright, so now we're going to go to cloth leg because we already discussed that, oh, we're good with the butt cloth now. It looks like it's not colliding with the legs as much. We're good. Now for the cloth ones, for his legs here, we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to hit cloth. Okay, and then same values, bending stiffness 1, dampening 0.2, and world acceleration 0.1. And then again, we're going to have to click here, and let me just click off this again and then go back in. There we go. Now they're in the correct positions. Make sure it's not paint and it's select max distance. Make sure manipulate back faces max distance is on. Now hit left click and drag over this. And sometimes you may have to edit this a little bit, but I'm going to do this as good as possible. We'll say that's good enough. Hit max distance. I might take that one off. Okay, so hit max distance. And then those cap colliders that we put right in here on the knees here, I'm just going to automatically set those to be tied to that. So element 0 is going to be the knee left. Element 1 is going to be the knee right. And if we hit play here, it should collide with those. So let's go ahead and hit play. Oh, I may not even need to have those colliders there for that actually. I may be able to just edit these for this one because as you can see they're pretty stiff and they don't really move very much. So they may not even clip through the leg. If it is, it's just going to be a very small amount. See, so that's pretty cool. I may not have to do that. Oh, well, it flipped up on itself. So that might be an issue. It might flip on itself, and that might become an issue. But I will have to test it in VRChat to really see if that is or isn't. So, yeah, that's pretty much how to do cloth dynamics. You're pretty much done after that. The last thing you want to make sure you do is hide your cap colliders. It'll still collide. It's just you want to make sure that these are hidden, because if you don't hide these colliders, like basically unchecking them like that, what's going to happen is if you keep those cap colliders active, what's going to happen is when you get into VRChat, it's going to do some wonky, crazy crap where you're going to keep flying into the air, and you're just going to keep flying up into the air, and then sometimes you might not have it happen. Sometimes it'll just wig out on you, and then you'll keep wanting to fly up into the air again. It gets very annoying very fast, and I used to struggle with this all the time when I was first doing this, and that's how I discovered that it was actually the cap colliders that were doing it. So yeah, make sure that you uncheck these here in the inspector. They're still going to collide with the cloth. It's just that anytime that those are actually there, they're going to do exactly what I mentioned. So yeah, just make sure that they're hidden. Any cap colliders that you have on your model, hide them. And I guess actually there's one last thing I was going to talk about. So dynamic bones, again, you guys will have to pay for dynamic bones. But how dynamic bones pretty much works is we would use it on little accessories that are actually on the model. So when we're dealing with dynamic bones here, so this accessory here on his belt, let's see, I think it's, yeah, keybot, I think is what it is. So if we move this around, so this one moves, it looks like. So what we're going to want to do is for dynamic bones, if you guys do have it, you want to hit add component, dynamic bone. And the best values that I find for accessories moving on dynamic bones is 0.5 as the dampening, leaving the 2 alone in the middle. And the inertia you want to set as 0.9. At least I think inert stands for inertia. So having these values seems to work pretty well, and you just want to make sure that keybot is dragged into the root here. And then the belt will also make the belt move, see if there's any additional bones, and there are, so we're going to select all these at the same time, add components, dynamic bones, and we're going to select the belt one here to that one, belt 2 to that root, and belt 3 to that root. Alright, then we're going to select all of them at the same time again, and we're going to make sure that they're set to 0.5 and a 0.9. There we go. So those ones are good. For the belt, key top, so this is probably the top of the key. This one's also going to get a dynamic bone, so 0.5, 0.9. Man, VRChat's going to hate me with all these dynamic bones I'm doing, but I don't care. Okay, let's see, spine, there's one last thing I would like to add. The bubbles on this model also seem to animate, but the thing is, when you start doing a shit ton of dynamic bones, then it really does become a performance decrease. I just try to do the minimal and just add it to necessary things that are on the models. Like, for instance, if this key ring moves on the model, I will do that. If his hair moves in the game, I will do that. This belt looks like it would move in the game, so I would do that as well. Anything else, additional things I don't like to touch on, like these bubbles moving, that just becomes way too taxing on the system. If anything, I will actually create a custom animation rather than using dynamic bones, because animations are way less taxing than dynamic bones. And all I would have to do for these bubbles to move is just changing the positions to go up and down to make it look like they're pulsing. Easy. So I could always do that on my own time. I could even do that for a separate video while I will show you how to animate this flower on his chest. So let's go ahead and find, I mean, here's his belly bone right here. You could even add jiggle bones to this too if you wanted this belly to be all over the place. But I'm not going to do it for this one, because it's just kind of, like I said, it's not a necessary type of bone to put there. What I am trying to find right now is I'm trying to find his hair right now. So we're going to go neck, head, and here we are, hair left here. We're just going to select all these. We don't do end bones. So anytime you find an end bone, you don't put dynamic bones on those because they don't do anything. It's just going to be these 4 bones right here that we want dynamic bones on. So, and again, we're going to hit 0.5 and 0.9 on all of these here. Drag and drop into the root. I mean, you could literally add this whole character as jiggle bones if you really wanted to, but we're only doing it on the necessary ones because that would look ridiculous. Okay, and that looks good. Okay, now we're going to hit play, and we're going to see what the final product of this actually really looks like. Of course, the cap gliders I'm going to have to fix myself, because I'm just saying that it looks like it's finished. But okay, as you can see, everything's moving. Even his hair moves, as you can see there. So if he goes back or forward, his hair moves. Even the key ring and his belt move. So you can see there, it kind of moves around a little bit. And that's how you make a avatar become more lifelike, by adding all this performance costing shit, apparently. So yeah, I mean, if I even went into the builder, it would tell me all this crazy shit like, no, you can't have all these dynamic bones. No, you can't have all these cloth dynamics. It's too taxing, blah. And it just starts, yeah, it gets mad at you for doing all this crazy shit. But I seem to add them on my avatar world, and I haven't been dinged for it. My avatar world still remains public, even though I have all this taxing shit on some of my models. So again, guys, I'm not here to cater to anybody that has potato systems. My system's even starting to get old, but I can still manage to create these avatars, and they work just fine. I mean, I don't have the best hardware in the world. I literally have a 1070 and a 6700 i7 with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and everything works flawlessly with VR. I don't have any performance dips on my avatar world, even when I'm using these avatars. So, like I said, if I expect you guys have a VR system, then I expect you guys to have relatively decent hardware, because to have a VR headset in general requires you to have a pretty relatively powerful PC. So, I don't know why there's so many restrictions in that sense, because it's like, well, even if you're playing the desktop version of VRChat, the desktop version's kind of like the handicap version of the game anyways, because it's called VRChat for a reason. So I mean, can't even really cater to desktop people. But again, guys, that's just kind of me just saying that I think you guys really would need the hardware to run these avatars if you want them to be more lifelike. Because I try to aim for an accurate representation of what it is in game, and I try to copy that over as much as I can to the best of my knowledge from things that I do in Unity. I don't really like them being very static and very still, like they're weighted and they don't really do anything. I like them to look as lifelike as possible. So yeah, guys, so if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns on this video, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you guys need help with anything, I'm very much willing to help you out. And yeah, in the next few videos, I don't know what I'm going to do on the next one. I might do animation, or I might do something else. I think animation is probably going to be the next one. But until then, I'll see you next time, guys. Peace out.